Thank you very much for this exaggerated invitation. Now I'm afraid that I will disappoint you. I wanted to start from what you probably read in newspapers or heard on television. Papa Francesco, a few weeks ago, in one of his very many public statements, he is one pope which thinks that talking to the ordinary people like us is his mission, his vocation. He said a few weeks ago that we are in a state of war, a permanent war. It may take different forms, different manifestations from the manifestations which it took before, but it is all the same a war. A few weeks ago, 400 years earlier, there was a philosopher, Thomas Hobbes, who said, pronounced the phrase which is still very much on our lips. He said, what is going on is bellum omnium contra omnes, war of all against all. Thomas Hobbes suggested that we are by nature aggressive. By nature, we intend to fight each other. And when we are fighting each other, and our desire for exercising violence is not stifled, is not controlled, is not under somebody taming action, it leads us to live in a state, live a life which is nasty, brutish, and short. That was said 400 years ago, under the influence, you remember your history, I hope, there were long, more than 100 years long, religious wars going on all over the Western Europe, and according to different estimates, something between 30 to 50% of the population of Western Europe at that time were destroyed in military action, in massacres, by soldiers entering and capturing a city, or by epidemics which followed them. No wonder that he described the situation as war of all against war. And he suggested solution. Having pointed that militancy, enmity, fighting is a natural predisposition of human beings, he suggested that if you want peace, if you want peaceful coexistence, if you want to feel safe from violence, not threatened at any moment by other people around you, you need to do something. It won't come naturally. His suggestion was presented to humanity under the name of Leviathan. Leviathan, according to Thomas Hobbes, was the society, the state, the supreme power which presided over daily life of these nasty, brutish people who made life together short. How it could be done? This supreme power needs to have monopoly for applying coercion. And it should apply coercion to submit, to eliminate, to disarm all other forms of violence, of other forms of coercion, which, by the same token, are made illegal, out of order, and need to be suppressed. So what Thomas Hobbes actually did was to draw a line separating legitimate coercion, coercion in defense of peace and order, coercion in the name of human security and safety, and illegitimate coercion, which is violence. Violence, coercing people without their consent for no other purpose than pursuing one's own interest. And he hoped that Leviathan could serve as a solution to this issue. What I'm going to suggest in my speech to you, my dear friends, is that in these 400 years, which separate the statement made by Thomas Hobbes and the statement made a few weeks ago by Papa Francesco, we made a full circle. We are moving at the moment in opposite directions. Instead of preventing people from exercising their instinct, their impulse of aggression and fighting, the alleged medicine against the situation, the Leviathan, is in fact developed interest in people's fear of violence. It serves the purpose. I will come to that in the end, but at the beginning I want to warn you what I will be talking about this passage from the utopian, very nice, very pleasant vision of Thomas Hobbes. Not his diagnosis. His diagnosis was anything but comforting, pleasant, but the solution he proposed, it seemed it can be done. I suggest to you as well that the next, not the whole, but almost great part of these 400 years we separate two statements was dedicated to achieve this purpose of secure existence. Security was very high on the agenda. The project of modernity, if there was anything like that, was to remove discomfortable elements from the conditions of human life, bring us more comfort, more feeling of safety, more conditions, better conditions, more self-confidence in creating conditions of life which are more hospitable to human wishes and human intentions. Well, why I'm speaking about war, why I'm speaking about antagonism, why I'm speaking about fighting for peace. The title of my lecture, after all, is Competition. Well, I like to suggest to you that competition is war with different means. As far as the motives of conducting competition, motives for conducting of straightforward military actions, the motives are very much the same. They are The same because in the world which we have created, which we live daily in, and to which we contribute all the time, in that world, people are divided between us and them. Us and them. That goes throughout human history, not only started in modern times. It's a long story. Us and them, we and them. We and them, which are mutually indispensable to each other. Because you can't define who the we are unless you point your finger to somebody or somebodies who are not like us, who are different, who are strangers, who believe in different things that we do, behave in different ways, sometimes speak different languages, sometimes have different color of skin, but we define ourselves by the fact of not being like them. That goes throughout history and takes, I repeat for the, I don't remember which time already, that it is all done in different forms, but it is going on. We have passed from the war of massive armies mobilized by state nations and invading foreign territories and destroying the local buildings, local culture, local people. We moved from there to competition. Also, we are, as in the times of traditional wars, we are still at each other's throat. But we behave in a different way. That is the only thing. How the way is different? Norbert Elias, you probably remember the name of one of the greatest sociologists of the 20th century. He wrote a very, very influential on our thinking book called The Civilizing Process. Civilizing process, making our life civilized by removing the most atrocious, abhorring, repellent manifestations precisely of our impulse of violence, of being violent to other beings. It was done by two different ways. One way was removing acts of violence from sight. There were times, not so long ago, when people were invited to public executions as witnesses. They liked the spectacle very much. That was all done in their eyes, in front of their eyes. Animals, we consume animals. We are carnivorous. We sometimes forget about it, don't like very much discuss the matter. Some people object to it, but most of us do it daily. But you don't bring the whole baked or in other ways prepared, cooked animal on the table, as our ancestors still, 100 years ago did daily. What comes to your plate before eating the very tasty meal does not remind you of the animal. It is just a little piece. You can safely forget what you are eating. How nice this original, this raw material out of which it was made, looked before it went through the operation of baking and life. And the other way of doing it was the downgrading dirty jobs, leaving them to inferior people. Inferior people which were, by the same token, degraded in their definition. They were half human, or lesser human, or worse human. Like in the Indian caste system, there were 4 castes which embraces the whole of humanity. And there was the 5th one, Panchama it was called. Panchama, some sort of a monster, apparently human, but not fully human. They could clean dirt you have been making. They were somewhere between human and animal world. Interesting point. Panchama is a very old concept, very old idea. But quite recently, as you know, a new term was introduced into common language, which performs the same function. The term underclass, or normal, ordinary, decent people belong to classes. To belong to society, you have to be member of a class. You are member of aristocracy, member of middle classes, you may be member of lower classes, working classes, but by being member of a class, you are also a member of society. There's no other way. But there is underclass. Underclass which does not belong to any class, which is below everybody else, which is inside but in fact outside the social system. That was the short, very brief, and very oversimplified history of the last 400 years, but I promise to tell you to concentrate mostly on competition, which is, I suggest, in our market society, in our individualist society, in our privatized society, the updated form of this bellum omnium contra omnes. I said it is the form of fight. We are competing for better conditions of life. We are competing for more social respect, higher social position in society, recognition, privileges, all sorts of things. But we are engaged in constant competition. We are actually brought up in being competitors. From very early childhood, our children 3 years old, 4 years old, when they start having their own mobile telephones, when they start spending most of their day watching not other human beings, but watching screens on which propaganda is made for their use. Now, these young children are already informed that if they want to deserve respect and derive joy out of that, they need necessarily to throw away last year's sneakers and buy or make your parents buy you the latest edition of sneakers. They are told to be ashamed of not being at least at the level of all others, but better still, above the level of all others. Being the first, being pioneer, having what gives you entitlement to social respect, showing that you are all right, Tom. And that starts, I repeat, almost from the cradle, almost from the moment of birth. And it goes on throughout life. When the children are leaving, finally, the comfortable zone of their own family, where everybody is entitled to participation, where one person is presumed to love and to care for all the others. When they leave it and go into the harsh, brutish, nasty, I remind you, how hopeful describe it, adult world, they fight to be pushed into more and more unscrupulous competitions with others. Frank Bruni wrote a few weeks ago again in the New York Times, very perceptive article. After investigating, researching quite a number of the high institutions, of the most reputable, in fact, institution of higher education in the United States of America, he came to the conclusion that the most prestigious, authoritative, stage-setting colleges of this world warps the values of students drawn into a competitive frenzy. Madness, competitive madness. I must be there one up, or my next door neighbor, or my mate in the same class. I must excel, I must leave behind other people. I measure the degree of my success by the measure of defeat, of failure of other people. That is the sort of comparison. Well, it's not just the question of what you hear from your mates. Not that they deliberately teach you a lesson. They behave like that. You know very well that if you work in a factory, if you work in an office, you are constantly, you must be constantly afraid that you are everything but safe. Your position, however hard you work, is constantly under threat. And you can't prevent it very well. It will come unannounced. Next merger between big companies, and you are already in the street. They don't need so many employees. They can cut the staff they command. And just to save some expenditure, get more profits, and receive higher ratings on the next announcement from stock exchange. So it is unsafe. We are living in a state of a constant fear that whatever we have achieved in our life by long and hard, arduous work is maybe removed, maybe taken away. You don't accumulate your achievements. Your achievements are until further notice. So it is information which you read, even if it is not outspoken, not articulated in so many ways, many words. You read it out from the experience of your own life. But of course there are forces also behind that. Behind that, the new managerial philosophy. The new managerial philosophy, which replaces the old-fashioned one, which very many people found at that time unbearable, and rightly so. It was stupefying, it was boring, you had to repeat endlessly the same movements, by command of your bosses, you had no freedom of action, and so on. Well, that has been removed. Henry Taylor Sr. conveyor belt or assembly line which reduced workers to the addition to the machine, mere addition, following machine in its movement. Now that is out. Out are also Frederick Taylor research of the measurement, time measurement, move and time measurement, which instructed the owners of factories to organize the working benches of employees in such a way that employees had no choice of the next movement they made. They were already predetermined by the organization, by the mechanism of the machine which ran the whole business. At that time, the managerial philosophy, which was observed and put into operation, a dominant managerial philosophy, was a very simple one. How to obtain full discipline, obedience, meek obedience of all employees in the plant, factory or office. How to make that they follow like really addition to the machinery, how they follow every decision of management. Managers felt themselves, they defined in their textbooks their own function as obtaining full unconditional conformity to their commands by the employees. Now, this philosophy has changed. This philosophy today, managerial philosophy, is to evaluate the employees not by the degree of conformity, but by the results of their work. Results of their work. They are not obliged any longer on following the direct command of their superiors. What they are obliged is to use all their resources, all their individual resources, their talents, their abilities, which were not recorded in the documents, in the files of the company for which they worked. But all their hidden resources, develop them to the full fruition for the good of the company, for bringing better results. The side effects of these two different philosophies, ladies and gentlemen, were also virtually opposite. The old managerial philosophy made life really boring, tiring, uninteresting, unexciting, but at the same time also secure, long-term, allowing you to make a sense of your life in one way or the other. Secondly, it produced also the impulse for developing solidary collections with all your workmates. It showed you practically. You didn't need lectures in philosophy to understand them. Practically, that you were all in the same boat, under the same command, following the same conveyor belt. And therefore, you can come together, stand fast together, shoulder to shoulder, and walk foot to foot, and develop this solidarity inside equally treated factory staff or office staff, which will somehow counterweight the power which your bosses have over you. With you, however, the managerial philosophy, you have the opposite situation. You have to show results. That is the demand. And that means that you must be 1 point better, at least, than your workmate. Unless you do it, when it comes to the next round of cuts, and you can be pretty sure that sooner or later it will happen, then the disaster will strike, namely, you will be losing your work, but the next mate in the same position will actually succeed in keeping him. Back on. The orthodox managerial strategy of philosophy inadvertently, unwillingly, that was not the intended motive of it, but nevertheless it promoted the chances of solidarity, human solidarity, human cooperation, human friendship, human peaceful relationship in the name of the common cause. The other strategy or philosophy, the new managerial strategy, on the contrary, and this time I suspect to very large extent deliberately, intentionally, promotes instead mutual suspicion and mutual competition. Mutual suspicion condition, mutual competition is very profitable business from the point of view of the big companies which employ people. They first of all prevent their fighting back if their condition worsens. Very fewer and fewer people are members today of defense organization of employees. Trade unions, for example, are very short of members. If you risk going on strikes, the managers have very good solution to the problem. They don't negotiate with you, they don't try to make your point clear. what they are doing is packing up their laptops, their mobile telephones, and switching their capitals to another place where people are more lenient, more submissive, they are not in a very fighting mood, and so on, so on. On the other hand, it is very useful by the same token that every individual employee, whether you work for a bank or whether you work for a factory of automobile tires, is encouraged to look with suspicion and not to enter very close, intimate commitments with workmates. Don't do it. Solidarity under this condition feels like a treacherous trap for the naive, gullible, foolish, and flippant. Solidarity does not pay. And in the fact which I try to underline, emphasize in quite a number of my writings, the fact that the human ties, human bonds, are prominent today for their weakening. We are as if you add to that situation computerization of a good part of our life, we can say that we are all loners who keep constantly in touch. We keep in touch. We keep in touch thanks to Facebook. All of you probably here, or most of you have accounts, I'm quite sure. Thanks to tweeting, sending messages, not longer than 140 characters. And so we are satisfied that we are in contact. We are no longer alone. At any part, at any moment in 24 hours long day, you can send a message, and if you are lucky enough, you can also receive a message. Somewhere in the world, big world, there is somebody able and willing, perhaps even, to receive a word of contact from you and reply in the same manner. Well, there is a concept now under discussion in social sciences about privatization of hope. Private hope is another victim of this elemental development of world in which human bonds are weak, in which chances of solidarity are close to nil, in which the ordinary, almost automatic reaction to the changing circumstances and new threats is to develop vigilance, suspiciousness, not to trust, withdraw trust that the help will come from something bigger than individuals fighting with each other. In the Boston Review, 3 months ago, there was an article by Ronald Anderson, who points out that hope is being privatized throughout the world, but especially in the United States and the United Kingdom. You are lucky he didn't call Italy by name. A seismic shift is underway, displacing aspiration and responsibilities from the larger society to our own individual universes. the detaching of personal expectations from the wider world transforms both of them. At one time, workers understood that they could improve their conditions by collectively asserting themselves as a category, as a class. Now, workers understand that their best option is to protect themselves by themselves. And there is the last result. The responsibility for the quality of life which you conduct, which your heart try to make better, this responsibility has been downloaded, or as the fashionable term today proposes, subsidiarized to human individuals. So the rational response of people who have reason is that, avoid long-term commitments, don't submit your private interest to interests of others, because it will all turn against you when it comes to really a big crisis in your life and life of people around you. We are being taught self-reliance, which translates as being trained to be at any moment determined and ready, and to count on nobody but ourselves. Another writer of New York Times points out, if anything unites America in this fractious moment, it is a widespread sentiment that power is somewhere other than where you are, beyond your reach. You can't influence much in your life. You are exposed to the blows of fate and can, I repeat for the third time, count only on your own private abilities.
Chiediamo per favore di ridurre un poco il brusio, soprattutto sul fondo della sala, perché l'ambiente è grande, rimbomba molto facilmente e ci sono ovviamente delle difficoltà ulteriori a seguire una lezione anche in una lingua straniera, quindi vi pregherei di fare un poco più di silenzio. Grazie.
Well, history helping the restructuring of the way in which the order in society is assured and people are made, encouraged, tempted, forced to obey the shape of the order which has been decided up there by powers that be. History helps. The question is that with this big shift in conditions of life, in the strategy of employers towards employees, in conditions of competition, which is brought to really white metal temperature, that all of that change also the character of relationship between these powers that be, your governments, parliaments, Supreme Courts, and the people who elected them to rule them. This character is changed. Until quite recently, the young people among you here don't remember these times. This obedience of citizens to the decision of the state, what was described rightly as manifestation of attachment to your own native country, the patriotism which you felt for that, all that was achieved by a promise, We, the government, we, the political elite, we, the parliament, are here in order to take care of your life troubles and to help, to assist you, to insure you against blows of fate. We are here to care for you. For many reasons, and I wrote profusely about it, but we don't have time to expand them to their right size. This promise cannot be more made by virtually every, with very, very few exceptions, if any, national governments. Cannot be seriously made. If it is seriously made, it will be broken immediately after successful election. The state cannot promise like that because of what can be described only like divorce between power and politics. Power is already global, power is already cosmopolitan, so to speak. Power lies well beyond the reach any national state which is confined to its own boundaries. Politics is as local as it was 100 years ago, but the power is global. So delivery on demands of the electors are virtually out of the question. I am not blaming politicians. I am blaming them only that under these conditions they agreed to be politicians. But once they agreed, there is no choice situation. They simply cannot deliver on these demands. And hence, the phenomenon of withdrawal of trust. Another trouble of contemporary times is that we tend not to believe in the value of the institutions, democratic institutions, which our ancestors put into place. We are withdrawing the trust. And therefore, how to justify power of the government? How to justify the right of the political elite to their electors' obedience? And I told you a moment ago, history came to the rescue of the nation-state powers having trouble with legitimizing their presence. In what form it brought? History. The globality of terrorism, the terrorist action. The terrorist action which suddenly made safe places unsafe. Terrorism has one very important feature. It strikes unannounced and in an unpredictable way, which means that your fear, your precaution must be constant, uninterrupted. You must be constantly on the alert. Your feeling of insecurity is virtually spreading all over your days, weeks, months, and years of life. For the second time, history came to rescue, initiating, you still remember last year, the massive influx of migrants, which could be interpreted to the already frightened population as a threat akin, very close to the threat of terrorism. You probably read your newspapers, you know how often incomers were accused of being hidden potential terrorists. Their danger was put on the same level as the threat by the single suicidal terrorist. That was historic gift to governments in trouble. I suggest to you, ladies and gentlemen, that in the same way as the consumerist economy tries to explain to us that its purpose is to satisfy our needs, but in fact, what they are the runners of the consumerist economy really interested in is something else, is keeping us constantly, perpetually unsatisfied. Because satisfied consumer is the end of consumerist industry. Just imagine that you wouldn't throw away your recently bought smart telephone simply because a better one, the new serial number, has been introduced. In the same way as consumerist industry lies to us, in the same way political elite, unfortunately, very often resorts to the Akin line, telling that they are there to mitigate, to subdue, to do away with our fear. But I suggest to you, ladies and gentlemen, that actually keeping fear in flame, not allow it to be replaced by tranquility and feeling of safety, is what political elite is interested in. Showing you on television, on hundreds of thousands of millions of television screens, the army units intervening in the riots inside a town, the 5 o'clock in the morning, entry of houses of allegedly inhabited by suspects, by the armed police, and of course showing endlessly again and again the victims of the last terrorist attack. They are all playing into the hands of this new legitimation of government. So this competition based on the feeling of suspicion to others and the feeling of competitiveness, of the contradictoriness of our interests, this rises from the level of neighborhood relationship or workplace relationship to the level of state politics. Well, to finish, I would like to anticipate probably the first question which you will be asking me. I warned you in advance that I don't have fully satisfactory answer to this question, but nevertheless, a few ideas about it. The question is, so what are we going to do it? What can be done to resuscitate, to restore the feelings of solidarity, of mutual understanding, of feeling secure in the company of other human beings? How to do it? How to achieve it? If so many factors speak against it. Well, I will finish where I started, with the words of Papa Francesco. I am returning to him because, in my view, he's next to no one, perhaps the only one, public figure with high authority which dares to say the truth about our present condition and deserves to be listened very carefully and thought about what statement he made. He suggests a solution. He suggests a solution, but, ladies and gentlemen, they are not short-cut solutions. I know that our ideal in the world, in the liquid world we live, is instant coffee. You just, put a little bit of powder into the glass and warm the water and immediately satisfy your desire for coffee. This is not how history works. The suggestion of Papa Francesco is dialogue. Martin Buber, once upon a time, several dozens years ago, suggested that between, in German, Begegnungen, encounters, there are meetings and mismeetings. And he suggested as well that most of our encounters are mismeetings, where we don't meet as two different but equal in rank subjects having their own values, their own preferences, their own propositions to make, their own state of life to select, and so on. They are just passing by each other. The kind of encounters which you make daily, probably in great numbers, sending messages to your registered friend on Facebook. The real meeting, suggested Martin Buber, and that is actually, I think, what Pope Francis developed very widely in his speaking about dialogue. The real dialogue, he says, is conversation conducted in the name of understanding each other. That is the beginning of story. First of all, you must start conversation. And then you develop the taste of understanding what the other protagonist in the conversation speaks about. What is his intention? How he justifies that? Now, that is already the second step. And, but that is only interest. The aim of all that is the idea of solidarity. And I suggest to you that you can't jump in one way from starting dialogue to achieving this effect, particularly in our multicultural, multi-religious, multilinguistic world in which we cohabit. It's a very difficult job. It means overcoming quite a lot of inborn instincts, impulses, received interpretations which don't fit the contemporary situation. It takes time. So in order to have a fruitful dialogue, it's another word. You need to develop another quality as well, the quality of patience, of determination, of not being put off by the lack of success in your first attempt. Go on. We are already condemned to populate the planet together, to live together. That is the verdict of history, which does not admit change or appeal. But what we still need to develop is awareness that it is the fact. And for our joint survival, peaceful survival, without wars and any other forms of cutthroat competition, we need to continue in this effort. And I wish you luck when you do it.